The Commissioner's Office operates an independent custody visiting scheme staffed by volunteers, which undertakes random unannounced checks on custody units across Devon and Cornwall, attending to the care of detainees in police custody. Could you briefly set out for us what statutory regulations govern how detainees are treated in custody, and also what you put in place to ensure that your officers and staff fully meet those expectations?
Yes, Commissioner. This is probably, alongside firearms, one of the most highly regulated parts of policing. It's governed by the Police and Criminal Evidence Acts and associated codes of practice, particularly Code C and Code G, which relate to the lawfulness to detain an individual, and alongside that is a considerable series of provision about safer custody, particularly around vulnerability, physical health and mental health. So it's a heavy statutory framework we operate within, and it is also very clearly signed within those codes that there are specific supervisory grades around sergeant, inspector, superintendent, but even through to chief officer, who have a part to play. We're subject to a number of independent reports. Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary, who reserved the right to have a spot check. We had one, I think, just over a year ago, which is an unannounced check that comes in and plays a report back afterwards, which came out very favourably for us, and even included a visit to the Isles of Scilly. So it's not just big areas such as Plymouth who are visited as a force area. We also are subject to any views or comments from other bodies. The Independent Police Complaints may make recommendations following incidents in custody, public complaint or more serious incidents. So those are woven into our organisation to try and learn lessons. And also Her Majesty's Coroners may well make recommendations which are subject to review. There's also what's ACPO, now National Police Chief Officer guidance around authorised professional practice. It's a heavily regulated environment, but in addition to that regulation, and as you say, your own independent scheme, and let's remember that independent scheme, the assumption is they are allowed access at minimal notice, really mindful of their own safety and prisoner safety. It's not announced to us, they come unannounced and they report independently to you. We have other management and supervision of custody, so it's not mainstream, it's a separate unit within the police world. So the arresting officers are not part of the team as the custody officers, they're completely separate. The supervisors of frontline staff are again completely separate, so there are firewalls within that. Prisoners are entitled and custody records are checked around sleep, around food, around also access to open space and air as well. Those are reviewed as in terms of long detention periods when someone's in custody over many hours. There is an adverse incident reporting by those inspectors that goes to the head of custody, and in addition to that you have the right and do indeed look at independent, what you call deep dives as to custody provision. The performance monitoring will be dip sampling of our CCTV. Custody is a CCTV rich environment that can be dip sampled at no notice, and at handover times that can be dip sampled as well. Healthcare provision, we have embedded healthcare professionals and that is contracted, and again that is subject to regulation. We also have a drug and alcohol referral. We have many others who work with us in the custody environment who feed back. And I would add lastly, in terms of that approach to custody, I very much welcome your support in writing to health providers to move mental health provision out of custody, and that is ongoing through the mental health protocol. In terms of the operational world, there is probably, or was at one point, no busier custody office than Charles Cross in Europe. I'm glad to say that's improved through good policing. In terms of there's not as many arrests, there's not as much crime or violent crime. Anything you'd add from a practitioner's world?
No, really, just to echo what the Chief Constable said, it's very highly regulated through a statutory instrument, quite rightly. And you know, Charles Cross as a custody centre is very, very busy, but at the same time the staffing and the supervision there is also really focused on making sure that that safe detention takes place, remembering that the primary purpose of arresting individuals is so that we're able to live the investigations to keep people safe, and in some very exceptional cases now, their own safety, but predominantly to allow the investigations and criminal justice pathway to be pursued.